So for task one, looking at the simple color 3D shader file, it uses two constant buffers for the camera and world matrices with registers at B0 and B1. And then I modified the dxapp.h file to include references for the new buffers and then structures matching the setup in the shader file. And then within dxapp.cpp, I added declarations in the initialization of the DX app, setting the buffers to null. And then within init demo, I constructed the world buffer and camera buffer, and then I binded them to the vertex or the vertex shader stage at the correct slots, B0 and B1. Inside draw scene, we can see that we only have to set up the camera once per frame, and then we draw each object on their own. And then making sure to include the new buffers inside the delete method as well. So for tasks 2 and 3, I have them all together in one project where we display a pyramid, sphere, and a box all with different colors. So similar to task 1, we have to modify the dxapp.h file to match the new buffers required for this specific shader, which were the cam data and instance data. And then we also need to include references to the number of objects that we want to display. And then inside modeltools.cpp, it was a lot easier to set up the pyramid, and the sphere took a lot of testing to get the winding and the poles aligned correctly. But the 3D geometry class helped a lot last semester. And then within model.cpp, we had to make sure to uncomment them from the switch case. And then within dxapp.cpp, similar to task 1, we have to create specific references for the shader that we're using. And then we have to build the cam data and the instance data, and then wire those to the correct stages. And then we specify which models that we want to be used. And then within draw scene, we see again that we only set up the camera once, and then we draw each object individually with their own unique color specified in the instance data. And then making sure to include the new created models and buffers in the delete and cleanup method as well. For task 4, it was also sort of similar to tasks 1 and 3, but at the same time now. The big caveat with using two shaders at once is we need independent references for their own vertex and pixel shader, as well as the input layout. And then the constant buffers required for the specific shaders to be used. So color selected needs cam data and instance data. Simple color needs the WVP buffer, which we declared on here. And then the number of models to be used. And then within dxapp.cpp, we declare all of those references up here. We initialize them as just null. And then within init demo, we have to kind of go through the entire stage of setting up the vertex shader, input layout, pixel shader for each shader that we're using. So we do that for color selected 3D, and then we build the required cam data and instance data. And then for simple color, we give it the pixel shader, its input layout with the position color, and then the pixel shader. and then the required WVP data buffer. And then down here, we can just declare the objects we're making, but they don't have a shader yet. And then draw scene, again, we only set up the camera once. And then for here, it's a little tricky because we have to connect each of the different vertex shader and pixel shader references for each of the specific shaders. So we have to declare that up here and then draw each object that we want to see. And then we have to unlink what we did up here and reattach the required shaders for the color that we want. And then draw the new objects with that shader. And then to just clean up everything that we referenced and constructed. And then we get two objects with the rainbow color, and then these two over here with simple color, or selected color, sorry. So upon looking at further work question 1, it turns out I wasn't doing it correctly, but I fixed that. So, what is it? Yeah, we declared 2 unit boxes when we didn't really need to. And then I just kind of uncommented out wherever we created it. And then deletion as well. But yeah, you can just reuse the same model since you're changing the world transform anyways when you're drawing it. You can just reuse the same model and then it still renders correctly. This is helpful because both objects use the same geometry. So sharing one model avoids storing and uploading duplicate vertex index data, which saves memory and keeps the rendering system cleaner and more efficient.